Well, here we are. We are now in the last season preview for all of these Eastern Conference teams, and the last team that I'm previewing in the Eastern Conference is actually the team that, of course, represent the Eastern Conference in MLS Cup, known as Toronto FC. And after I finish TFC season preview, that means that I officially hit the halfway mark in terms of the season preview. And as I mentioned in the last season preview, I'll start the Western Conference season preview and look at all these Western Conference teams starting on Saturday. And the Rapids will be the first team that I will be talking about coming out of the Western Conference in terms of the season preview. But before that, we got to finish off with TFC as the last Eastern Conference team to do season preview. And they, of course, last season finished with a record of 13, 10, and 11 and finished with 50 points. They scored 57 goals, allowed 52, and had a goal differential of +5. Now, last season summary, they finished fourth in the Eastern Conference, and they were kind of the Cinderella story in the playoffs last season because not a lot of people gave them chances of actually going deep. In fact, I was kind of one of those person where I kind of question whether or not if they can do something in the playoffs and make a deep run because during the latter part of the season there were times where they can show that they can make a deep run, and then there's times where I feel like they could be eliminated in the first round. Well, they shown that they made that deep run into the playoffs, and they made it all the way to MLS Cup, which unfortunately they did lose that one, and they lost the MLS Cup to the Seattle Sounders by a final score of 3-1. They did lose in the Canadian Championship final to the Montreal Impact, and they lose it in one of the most common way TFC lose on a cup final game, which is penalty kick shootout. Like, seriously, I'm pretty sure TFC fans, anytime if a game does go to penalty, they will feel like they're gonna have this deja vu feeling that the team is gonna just choke in the penalty kick shootout and not gonna be winning that one because I believe they have now lost 3 straight penalty kick shootout, going back all the way to the penalty kick shootout loss that they did to also the Seattle Sounders back in 2016 MLS Cup. And also they got eliminated in the first round of CCL. And just for the sake that I don't want to twist the knife even further on TFC, I'm not going to mention the fact that who they exactly lost in CCL, and I'm not going to mention the fact that, that was a pretty embarrassing result, and that was one of the worst results you have ever see a MLS team heading into the CONCACAF Champions League. Now, in terms of player that they bought in, they didn't really made a lot of offseason signing this offseason, but I guess the reason why that is the case is because they already had a pretty good squad heading into the offseason, and they feel like it's going to be good enough to make another run of MLS Cup again heading into this season. The guys that they bought in are Rocco Romero, Jakili, Marshall Ruti, and Jaden Nelson. All 3 of these guys are from TFC2 and that they got promoted to the senior team. And the only major acquisition that they made this offseason is Pablo Piatti, who they just signed this week on a DP contract and making him the 3rd DP on this team. Now, in terms of players that is out of this team, well, TFC did lose a couple of key pieces, especially in the depth department of their team. Guys like Jay Chapman and Drew Moore, who, they were definitely long-time TFC player, but unfortunately this offseason they, of course, move on with the club and go to somewhere else. Jay Chapman, I believe he went to Inter Miami, and Drew Moore went to the Colorado Rapids. Kader Patterson Swell, Ashton Morgan, Aiden Daniels, Ryan Telford, John Bakro, and Nicholas Benezet are also guys that is no longer with this team. Ashton Morgan, another longtime TFC player, and a player that I didn't think he was going to move anywhere this offseason, especially with the fact that he is considered not only one of the fan favorite, but he's been there for so long, and that this offseason is going to be very interesting seeing him in a different jersey than TFC, and I believe he's going to go to RSL heading into this upcoming season. And Nicholas Benezet, the guy that scored that tying goal against Atlanta in the Eastern Conference that really kind of stunned Atlanta at that point is now with the Colorado Rapids. Now, in terms of goal scorer of this team, I mean, it's pretty easy. It's Josie Altidore. He is the main goal scorer of this team. And you just wonder, with Josie Altidore, knowing the fact that he has been having some injury issue and that as he does get a little bit older right now, you wonder, is this going to be maybe either his last season where he's going to be very productive in terms of the goal scoring department for TFC, or if his time is running out in terms of still being just a lethal goal scorer. I mean, no doubt, Josie Altidore, I think, when he does kind of hand up his boot, he is going to be right along with Clint Dempsey as one of the greatest American player to not only play in MLS, but also with the national team. But, you just wonder with him, with his age getting older and the injuries that he have been suffering and dealing for the past couple of seasons, that it's kind of getting close of his time potentially with TFC and really his time of playing in this game. Now, in terms of the playmaker for this TFC team, it's going to be Alejandro Pozuelo, which shouldn't be a big surprise again because Pozuelo was one of the big pieces that they bought in during the middle of the season. And, when he first came into this team, he definitely made some great first impression by scoring goals and also being a creative player. And the MVP award that I predict that TFC is going to get is definitely going to be Alejandro Pozuelo, and that of course continues the pattern of me always picking playmaker as the MVP of the team. And this one is pretty justified because, again, Pozuelo, he's not only the creative player on this team, but he can also be the goal scorer of this team. And at time last season, when Josie Altidore wasn't available for TFC, he was really the main goal scorer of this team. And then also with a couple of the midfield player for TFC also scoring a couple of goals to kind of contribute and try to at least load off a little bit less of a load on Pozuelo being the main goal scorer. Now, in terms of the surprise package, there was definitely a lot of names that I could choose in terms of the surprise package, but I'm going to actually go with Richie Larea, who I thought last season he looked very impressive, especially when he came on the scene, where you can definitely see he could be a very talented player. And there's no doubt that he is a guy that could be aimed to be a starter for the Canadian national team. And if he does continue to do what he did last season and continue his good form that he had last season, there's no doubt that he could actually end up in the Canadian national team and a good depth piece and a good substitute piece for TFC to have off the bench. So I'm going to put Richie Larea as a surprise package for TFC. Now, in terms of what I like about this team is that this squad still has the potential of going back in MLS Cup. And notice how I said they have the potential of going back to MLS Cup, and I didn't say they look like they are definitely going to be going back to MLS Cup. And the reason why I say potential is because when you look at teams in MLS Cup, and especially the losing team, a lot of the time the losing team doesn't get back to MLS Cup. And heck, when you look at these last couple of MLS Cup, unless if you are a Cascadia team, which is Seattle or Portland, most of these teams usually don't get back to the MLS Cup the very next season, which that just kind of tells me that it might be a little bit of that MLS Cup hangover. A team, of course, would suffer. But then again, having said that, TFC were one of the teams that actually made it to back MLS Cup back in 2016 and 17. So technically, history doesn't really go against them, even though history says that, when you look at teams that have been in MLS Cup, and then unless if you're the Cascadia team, and then early on, if you are the LA team, yeah, you are not going to make it back to MLS Cup that you previously was in heading into the previous year. Now, the one big question for this team is that who will actually step up for Michael Bradley and who, of course, stepping up in his position. Bradley, of course, will be out for the first couple of months with that broken foot that he suffered in that MLS Cup. And I'm guessing most likely it's going to be Liam Fraser, the one that is going to be stepping up. And actually, I could have maybe put Liam Fraser as a surprise package too, because he also kind of impressed me when he was playing with this team last season, and definitely have some decent quality. But I'm assuming Liam Fraser might be the front runner in terms of taking that spot, but there's definitely other option that they had. They could have also put Jonathan Osorio in Bradley position, or they can even maybe put Marky Delgado in that spot. Well, actually, I don't think that might be a good idea, especially the fact that Marky Delgado has definitely not been as good as he used to be a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who, of course, will step up in Michael Bradley position. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of my season preview of Toronto FC. And like I said, we are all done in terms of season preview for every single Eastern Conference team. And starting next week, I, of course, will be do preview for all the team in the Western Conference, starting with the Colorado Rapids on Saturday. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.